Welcome to Visibility by Design podcast with your host, Juliette Stapleton. In this show, I want to help you combine your marketing strategies and your human design potential so you can show up, stand out, and attract your perfect clients with confidence and ease. Are you ready? Enjoy the show. Hi guys, welcome back to Visibility by Design with your host Juliette Stapleton. I have an awesome guest for you and a very interesting episode. Stay with me. Let me introduce you to Kehla, a spiritual mindset coach, an expert in human design and gene keys, and just a very, very awesome 6-2 sectoral generator that I found once on my search through Instagram. And I was like literally blown away because Kehla has a very distinctive voice. And so I thought she will be the perfect person to bring to you guys.
Hi. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I'm so flattered that you said I have a distinctive voice because I have a completely open throat center, which is like shocking, right?
It's amazing. I think that sometimes, we assume that, if you have a defined throat, you will have a distinctive voice. I have a defined throat, right? But I do think that I meet so many people with completely open throat, and yet the way they speak, there is nothing short of full focus, confidence, expressing themselves. And that's and I binged a little bit on your podcast. You express yourself very, very directly. I don't think that you're short for words or, ideas or things like that. And you mentioned that you have a lot of openness in your chart. So that's just an example. Openness is like literally like opening yourself to the versatility of possibilities in the world. It doesn't mean that you cannot do something. And I want to be an ambassador for this, and break that myth that if you're open, then something you can't do. You absolutely can. Question for you straight away. And I am obsessed with profiles. I am kind of like only in I couldn't say that it's completely early stages because I've been obsessed for years, but I'm really getting into profiles while working with clients. So 6'2" is a very fascinating profile. And you're 6'2". It's very interesting to me because I can see how my perception of you when I'm looking at your photos or your website is kind of like someone very remote. And, that line too, which is, it really shows to me like sort of like I just want to be alone and, I just want to be in my world. And yet when I listen to your podcast and I see how you express yourself, it's a completely different thing. It's this like real innate wisdom and it just pours out and there's nothing there. There's like, come to me and listen to me, energy. That's how I perceived you. What is life like as a 6'2"? What are the challenges? What are the good things?
I love this question so much. So I'm laughing. I'll just talk about the photos in that I have, let's say on my website, if you go and you look at it after the show, those photos, I did a photo shoot last year and I feel like my inner goddess like came out in these photos. So it was because it's an unconscious line, but the 2 line, you don't really see your own wisdom or your own essence, right? So I think that's really funny. But for the 6 line, one thing I really noticed is that we have 3 phases in the 6 line. And so the first 0 to like 30 years old, when you have your Saturn return, it's a lot of trial and error. So really up until my late 20s, it was a lot of different jobs, lived in a lot of different places, like figuring out a lot of things. And it was like so distinct. Like as soon as I was at the end of 28, turning 29. That's when I started my coaching business. That's when I had like the most clarity. And I went on what they call the roof, which is the 2nd phase of the 6th line. And so this is really where I'm at now, is like reflecting on this wisdom that I have and this experience that I have. And then when you go off the roof into, I guess what they call your years of master, that's like around the age of 50. And so I guess that'll be a totally different experience as a 6th line. So I feel like what I love about the 6'2" profile is I do have this like natural ability of like accumulating wisdom. Like I told you, I've only been studying human design for less than a year, but I feel like it does come really naturally. And then, this essence that you're experiencing on my podcast channel is like me taking that wisdom and just role modeling, like, this is what it is. Here's the facts, here's this, like, it's very to the point, like teacher, leader, let's go. And so that's what I love about it. And I think one of the challenges of the 2 line in particular is, like I mentioned, this inability to, let's say, see my own wisdom. Like things feel so natural that it's like, oh, I don't know if I know enough. I don't know if this is good enough. Like, I'm just not sure. So there's a bit of it's funny because there's a bit of a projector vibe with the 2 line where it's like, when I get invited to share my wisdom, then I'm like, oh, I can see it now. So those are some of the challenges and whatnot, and my experience of being a 6 too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm really fascinated. It's how we perceive ourselves, how we express ourselves. And so much of it just shows in just a simple, the profile lines. I will tell you what really blew my mind when I came across human design. Well, when I came across human design a couple of years ago, but I was just really using it for my own personal development, because it just, that's your user manual. And I was saying, oh my God, all my life I'm doing the personality tests and archetypes and everything. And this is so accurate. It explains everything. And it doesn't tell you like, this is a box that you belong to. It's sort of like, there's a potential. Would you like to reach your potential? This is the way this is a strategy and I'm thinking, yeah, actually that's exactly how it all happens, and it's a really interesting world. But there was a next level, and the next level was literally a couple of months ago, where I think I got a newsletter from someone, and I apologize to that someone that I don't remember who it was, because I'm so dyslexic with names, because I don't pay attention to all the details that I don't need. And then I see this one line. I did a chart for my business. And I thought, oh my God, I'm a projector. I'm a 1-3 projector. I am a classic projector. I'm not an energy projector. I have a lot of times when I just, I give creativity and then I lie flat. This weekend I was lying flat because last week was very creative. And so, there's a lot of this energy. And yet in my marketing, for the last 5 years, I'm showing up. I'm using Facebook profile as my center stage. And they even branded me the queen of visibility. And it was like a thing, I was so consistent and, building the visibility that is, quite powerful, I think, at a first glance. And I'm thinking, how is it possible with being a projector, knowing everything about, the projector, knowing how I have periods where I hide, and how can I hide if I'm the queen of visibility? So I did a chart for that business that I had, and I couldn't believe it because it was a generator. It was an emotional generator. Now there's the next stage last November, and this podcast was born on the day when I decided, okay, I'm going to bring this human design as a compass into my business, because people are struggling in marketing. So how can we make their visibility a bit easier and safer to show up? And I did a different chart for that day when I had this idea, and everything changed. And this is a completely different chart. And so guys, I asked Kehla, because Kehla posts, actually her Instagram is amazing and she really doesn't hold back anything. There's so much great information. I have a lot of screenshots already from your profile, a lot of saved posts. But one of them was just recently, was about the business chart for your own business, wasn't it? It was something you mentioned about your own business. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to just kind of showcase, and maybe use my business as an example, but just showcase how there is this different layer of energetics that the business brings to you. Because yes, you are who you are and you have your design, and yes, it's all fair enough, but in our businesses there's something happening that is a little bit, you don't do things like what you do in your business sometimes in your personal life. So if you can resonate with this, and I definitely know that the way I am in the personal life and the way I'm showing up, it's almost like two different people. There is a core obviously overlap, but there's different energetics. And so this is exactly what we wanted to talk about today and show. If you are just listening on a podcast, there is a link in the show notes that you can jump into the YouTube and and have a look at what we're doing. But we're actually going to share screen, and I'm going to pass the baton to Kehla, and we will talk about this. Like maybe what is your take on creating a business chart and then creating a connection chart?
Yes, I love one of the things that you said that I think is really important is just how you notice this overlap of who you are in your life and then who you are and how you show up in your business. Because that's literally the piece of evidence where, when you show up in your business and you have a business chart, that will literally explain why energetically you're showing up different, because there's this chemistry and this experience of being in your business. So right now on the screen, we're looking at a connection chart. So first off, I'll start with the basics. If you want to run a chart for your business or literally anything that you want to do a connection chart with, you just need to decide like when the birth date is, the birth time, and the birth location. So obviously that's what Juliette did last year. And then we came up with a 1-3 manifesting generator. And the other thing I want you to know is if you want to run a business chart, it's on Genetic Matrix. It is on the pro account, but I actually found out that you can pay for like a daily membership, or you can do a monthly if you want to have access to this feature. It's not a free option, but I just wanted to be transparent about that. So when I look at this, I'm really excited because like from a bird's eye view, I can see that obviously you're going to be experiencing a lot more emotions in your business because there's a lot of activation in the emotional solar plexus, which is on the bottom right hand side. And then I was just kind of looking at like bird's eye view, lots of activation, like the emotional solar plexus is going to be a big thing. Your intuition from your spleen, there's a lot of activation in there. And then there's a lot of activation in the throat center, the ajna, and the head center. So I feel like I'm curious if doing like a bird's eye reading, if you experience a lot of like ideas and inspiration and, you know, conceptualization, and then it's really easy for you to vocalize this. And that 4323 channel, they call it the channel of genius. Like the way that you see things and share things is like not to the times, it's like beyond, and people kind of need to catch up with that way of sharing. And there's just, you've got the 56, which is also like storytelling. And I know that 35 is about adventure and like moving on to new experiences. So I feel like your experience in your business now is going to be very lively and just, you know, lots of emotions, intuition, the thinking and the sharing is like very potent. So I'm curious if that resonates with you.
This is so interesting because I call myself a flatliner in life. You can see on the side where I have a completely open emotional center. There is no activation there as a person, and I am a flatliner. Whatever happens in my life, yes, of course I can freak out, and of course I can feel happy, but I'm kind of I'm always more or less, you know, steady in my emotions, you know, unless there's someone beside me who I think I've learned in my life not to react, but I was very affected before, you know, by people with emotional weights. Like my sister is an emotional generator. So, you know, every time she'd say something and I'd always take it personally and I'd feel like it was, you know, like it was all my fault. In my business, I am completely different, but this is an interesting thing with emotions in the business. And this is interesting for me because as a person, I don't understand emotions because I don't experience them. Is that high? And what we're talking about here about the highs and the lows, because I can tell you that I have that business related. I have the highs and the lows. And I thought to myself that maybe it has to do with me just being depleted after the creative process. But I think it's more than that now that you're saying that there's a lot of activation in the emotions. So what I've experienced in the last couple of months, you know, well, since 4 months since I decided on opening this business and this business was born, I definitely feel like there is real highs and then there's real lows on an emotional center. And what you said about the ideas, oh my God, I have not felt that. I am so creative. I write, and everything I write gets published. It's so exciting, and it's just constantly comes out of me when I'm on the high.
Yeah.
And it's a new life for me. It's a completely new experience for me.
Yeah. And I think one of the things too is that in your chart, so you have your head and ajna defined and you have a split. So then you have your throat connected to your spleen. So when you're in your business, because your business has the 4323 from the ajna to the throat, you're going to have that connection to share your ideas and to share your perceptions, your beliefs, and what you're creating. So that's why you're going to feel that energy. The other thing too, because you have your head and ajna defined, your throat and spleen, and then everything else is undefined or open. When you look at your business chart, there's 3 motor centers that are defined. You have the sacral, you have the root center, and the emotional center. So it makes sense that you like go into your business and then you go and you do all these things because you're like picking up on all that energy, and it's like creative energy and it's exciting and it's an emotional, and then you're like, hey, I gotta lay down for the weekend. Which I think this is it's such a great example of you leveraging the experience of having a business that is an emotional sacral being. because I think what people do is and even I was doing this before I knew human design, is like I would so closely identify with my business that it just like wouldn't stop. There'd be no energetic boundaries. And I think that that's so important, especially with you as a projector. You go into your business, you do all these things, and then you back off, which is like, so I think that's so great that you have that awareness.
It's such a great point because, generally as a projector, you have to learn, because a lot of us grew up. I grew up with a family with two generators and one manifesting generator. I was the one who was bouncing off the walls in that family. They thought that I was the complicated child. And now I'm so, I live with two projectors, so we don't energize each other. And there's a lot of kind of depleted energy. And learning how to actually take rest, how to take a rest with your defined head. This is a nightmare. How you can't stop yourself from thinking. How do you rest? How do you switch your mind? It was a big lesson for me on a personal level, but stepping away from your business, what you said, how we identify with our businesses, it is so important that we have that separation. And so having this awareness of what business comes to you, stepping into it, but then you will still feel tired. Like what I was, describing, I had just like a masterclass, wasn't a big launch even 2 weeks ago, was, there was a masterclass, then we had a lot of conversation, then I had a lot of work. And then by this weekend, my projector body needs complete rest. It had nothing to give. It was quite, I was watching SNL for 3 hours in bed on my phone, and that's how I rest my brain. But it's a completely different experience, and I think I love that you brought that, the whole thing about energetic boundaries from your business, because that's where we get too tired going on social media. A lot of people say, I'm sick of Facebook. I get this same thing. So when I feel depleted, I don't want to look at Facebook because I don't see, I can't get anything from there. So stepping away is so important. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, no, I'm so particular about that. And it's funny because like in my chart, I only have my G center, which is right in the middle of that yellow sort of triangle, not triangle, diamond, and then the sacral. And so I think when you have definition in your chart, you can see for others, like, what they can benefit from in terms of like, for some reason, I mean, actually, I'm not surprised because opposites attract. I do attract a lot of splenic projectors in my life. And which is kind of funny because obviously you're a splenic projector, right? And my boyfriend's a splenic projector. And so I really noticed that what I bring to them is like this ability to like rest, like do what you love doing, but also just rest. And like, you don't have to be go all the time, like I always make jokes with my boyfriend. This is such a stereotype around projectors taking naps, but like, he wasn't feeling well yesterday. I was like, you're going to take a projector nap? Like, just do it, And I think it's so important rather than being like, well, why aren't you as energized as me? Like, why aren't you doing this and doing that? And so I think that having that awareness of the different types and how we can support each other is like really powerful. I have a question for you though.
Yes.
So you have an undefined G center and your business has an undefined G center. And I'm curious what your experience is of that, because the G center, just so that the listeners and the watchers know, is about self-identity, sense of direction, and lovability. So usually what happens is when somebody has an undefined G center is that they kind of, when they go into certain environments or they're around certain people, they really get that flavor of that person's identity. And if there is a lack of awareness, they kind of take that on, right? And then when they leave, it's kind of like this identity crisis because they're not in that energy. And so if you don't have that awareness of like, oh, I get to be fluid with what I identify with and the directions that I go in and my interests and so on, that's really the power of having an undefined, G center. And so my G center is activated. Like I have like 6 gates on it. Like it's it's a solid G center. And so I'm really curious for you, especially because when we talk about business, a lot of people are like, you need a brand. But when you have an undefined G center, and I know a lot of people who do, they really are fluid with their brand. And so I would love to hear your insights on that.
I love this question. And I'm so happy to share this but we also have to mention one thing before I mention this. Neither me or my husband have a G center defined, but we live together and we have defined in our connection chart, we have a defined G center. And even though we were together for many, many years before we got married, I felt like when I took his second name, Stapleton, it just kind of clicked and I had such a solid identity with this. But in my life, I'm a chameleon. I do change. When I was growing up, I always wanted to change the color of my hair. Now I have a lot of gray hair and I'm like, okay, well, at least it keeps me kind of in check. But, before it was like all the time I want to change. I want to have different styles. I want to express myself differently. I really appreciate this energy of being a chameleon and being able to sort of like, play different roles with different people. I'm really, really natural at that. When I found out what this undefined G center is, I kind of felt very relieved because it just meant that, I've always been like this. And even my husband, he would say to me things like, you don't talk to me the way you talk to other people. And I'm saying, because I'm undefined G center, what do you expect? You don't either, but that's what we do. But in business, it's very, very good question that you asked, because I don't know how that definition that my husband and me, that connection creates, how much that affects my business. But I do have to say that there's sometimes situations where I follow somebody. I'm definitely getting really drunk on their energy, but then I get too much. It's like I feel that I am losing myself just by being in that person's or people's group. And that's why, and maybe it's also with the 1-3 because it's a very self-absorbed kind of, we don't need other people sort of profile. But I do find myself leaving, groups, memberships, programs. I can't stay for too long because yes, I feel like I will start losing myself, who I am. And so for me, the best way to operate is definitely kind of pretty much in isolation and being a leader. If it's a group, it's group that I lead rather than being part of something or following someone, because there's definitely, and then what you said about, there's a period after, and I've had it before I was aware of this whole thing. I would follow a coach, for example, and then something, I'm trying to do what they're saying, like that's the way, how it is, and I believe them and I love their energy and I know that it's working for them, but it's not fucking working for me. And so I get really like derailed. And recently I haven't been investing into any coaching because of this one thing, that I was getting derailed if the coach was wrong. And for me to know that this is the right person and there is a right length of time, or there's a flexibility and understanding that I need to exit. And if I need to exit splenic person, I just know it can happen any moment, basically. And so it's kind of like an interesting and very complicated energy. But I think the awareness, if you are like this, the awareness of the fact that what belongs to me and what doesn't belong to me, which applies to all of our, openness. And as you said, you have a lot of openness. And I think that's the podcast episode that I was listening to. You were talking a lot about, like being aware, is it yours? Is it not yours? And not clinging on and not affecting your evaluation of your confidence levels by the fact that you are actually, maybe you have somebody else's energy that you're trying to, take on or hold on to. And then because you're not that, then you don't feel confident. And I really loved that. You called it conditional confidence. I think it was.
Yeah, no, I love what you just shared. And I think it's such a great example. Like, I love it when I find people who have an undefined G center and they really embrace it, this chameleon ability and knowing their limits of like, okay, I need to leave this environment because I can feel that I'm losing myself. Right. And I think that there's a difference between having awareness of that and then having shame about it. Like, oh my God, I can't be in these places because I lose myself. Like, no, you're literally designed to really honor your boundaries around your undefined centers, right? And so I really love that you brought that up. And the other thing I would love to talk about, and we can talk about, this term conditional confidence, like that podcast episode that I did, I just loved it so much because I'm somebody, like I said, I only have 2 centers defined. I have a lot of openness, undefined places, which means when you have undefined charts, centers and channels and gates, those are your places for more conditioning because you experience more energetic, energy from your environments and people. And so then you can pick up things that are literally not yours, right? And so conditional confidence, I want to talk about this because you have a completely open heart center and so does your business. And my heart center is completely open as well. And so I think this is really powerful because this shows up a lot in the coaching industry. So the heart center, the little small triangle in between the G center and the emotional solar plexus on the right-hand side of the chart, this center is a willpower center. It's also your center for desires and really knowing, worthiness. So it really ties into the energy of the G center as well. And the shadow side of it is needing to prove yourself. And so how this shows up in the coaching industry is, let's say it's less likely that people have the center defined because there's only 4 gates and channels coming off of it. But you see this in the coaching industry where it's like, oh, you need to charge more, like you're not charging enough, or this is how much I charge. And this, you need to have all these bonuses and do an early bird and do this. And if that doesn't feel aligned for you, and then you notice yourself doing it, it's like, oh, that is a shadow side of an undefined heart center of needing to like prove yourself, right? And so I really noticed that until I started to pay attention to the center and the level of conditioning that I had around it, that I would do that. I would over deliver. I'd do all these like freebies, and I would, do like extended this. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but when I look back, I was not honoring my energy. I was completely draining myself in order to show that I was worthy. So
I can
really
relate
curious.
so much. Yes.
Yeah, this is so relatable. And that's the thing. If somebody, let's say the conditional confidence thing, if someone had this center defined, and let's say we weren't aware of this, someone had this center defined, and you'd get into coaching calls with them, and they would be like, okay, Kehla, this is how you're going to do this and this, like, you're such a worthy person. Like, this is what you desire. You're going to go for it. I'm in their energy. So I'm going to pick that up and be like, fuck yeah, like this is me, this is what I'm going to do. And then I go and I like leave our coaching call, or I leave that container, and then I'm going to go and I'm working on my landing page, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I should charge that. So then it's conditional confidence, because I'm only confident when I'm in the energy of that person who has that definition. And I'm not actually honoring the fact that that center is open for me and I get to decide what's valuable, and it's going to have fluidity. So I'm really curious to hear your insight on this, because I think this is such a massive theme in the coaching industry. And I could literally talk about this for all the centers, but we'll just stick with that one today.
It's such a great question. Yeah, I haven't, I myself personally, because you can see I have a completely open one. There's no gates. There's some sort of gate hanging, gate 40 on the business one, and I don't know what it adds. But on a personal level, I am a recovering people pleaser, and definitely proving yourself, wanting to be kind of like accepted and loved, and your value. Undercharging was the story of my life. Working for nothing was the story of my over delivering. Always trying to do more. And I know there's a lot of conditioning as well, because, even like my mom always would bring work. I remember she was working in the statistics department when I was a kid. She would be bringing home these huge stacks of perforated paper with reports. And like, that's how I remember my mom, not playing with us, but like on a calculator, manually calculating something. And so this kind of whole thing is like, I need to prove that I am worthy. Is a big theme in the coaching business. And what I love about the coaching business, and actually about visibility and sharing, you're like I do anyway, sharing your story, is like there's a lot of awareness that you start building around this. So for example, what you mentioned, this whole pressure about raising your prices. You're like, okay, I'm going to raise my price, but you don't feel comfortable charging that. And yes, there is an argument that maybe you have some sort of things to release and understand your value. And what works for me, and I love that I'm sharing this, because I didn't plan to share it, but what works for me is, I read somewhere last year, do not remember where again, but when you have a completely open heart center, will center, that you are actually designed to receive, as in it's not about you proving your worth. It's not about you that you can't make money or you can't receive your goals. And I've always said that all my dreams have come true. All my dreams literally come true in the way I say, when I was 3 years old, I said, I'm going to go abroad and find, my husband who's going to be music producer, and I'm going to marry him and bring him back to Estonia. And that's exactly what happened. Like a 3-year-old knew the story. And now looking back, I didn't plan even to come back to Estonia. Now I'm here in Estonia, and all these kind of things. So there is something that when you trust that what you want, you'll receive without any effort on your behalf, without any proving yourself. In the business itself, it has been and still still is to an extent, because it's all work in progress, but there is a lot of insecurity about how much you want to deliver for the price. I think with the pricing, I love the idea of like, it has to be sweet enough for you. So there is a point where it becomes not sweet, and it has to be sweet enough. So you don't need to go beyond, but it has to give you the sweetness. So either cover your bills and then have some more, and then, make you feel satisfied that your time was not wasted, or your energy even more. It's not even the time, but the energy that you're giving, because we give a lot as coaches, has to be compensated in a way that feels sweet for you. And you don't feel like you took advantage, but you also don't feel like like people pleasing, like you don't feel satisfied with this. And that was my big discovery. And I think that this is still the conditioning. I have to consciously work on the energy of receiving. When I try and really work on that and meditate on the energy of receiving, a lot of good things happen, and I don't have to apply any effort at all. But when I forget to do that and go back into the, thinking that, oh, is that enough? Or, do I need to add something else? I'm just about to start promoting, the next round of my membership group. And so, it's all these things. So how many trainings should I add to this? So they feel like it's value, but I know that these guys are they already feel value. I don't have to prove myself. Otherwise they wouldn't be with me. And this is it's such a deep, very interesting question. But when you know why, when you know that this is something that nothing's wrong with you, it's not that you have to, put up your prices or make 5-figure months, or, 6 figures, or whatever it is, whatever's sweet for you, that's the right thing. Whatever you're receiving and you're happy to receive, that's the right thing. And maybe it'll change over time, and it depends on, your obviously outgoings and what is the sweetness. But I think that that's much more important. When you know that it has to do with the open center, it's easier to deal with it. That's how I would put it. It's just easier because you have the awareness. So you start being easy on yourself a little bit. And then you also I'm very mindful when I'm talking or working with people who have the will center defined, because this is exactly what you described. When you feel so confident in their presence, you just, but the moment they leave, it's like Tony Robbins example. You watch a Tony Robbins, training or something, you're like, yeah, let's go. And then 5 minutes later, when the training is not there, you're like, ah.
I actually think he has his heart center defined, which is kind of funny.
Yes, he has. 100%. Yeah.
I think he's also a generator too. So I was like, yeah, just like getting all that energy and then leaving from it. And I actually just want to like hone in on this a little bit, because the example that you gave, like, I love that you said this about, and I've read this too, about the undefined open heart center, and that you're really meant to receive. You're not meant to like willpower into things. You don't have we don't have the sustainability to do that because it's undefined. It's just a different way of receiving. And I love that you brought up this example of like, what's the sweet spot? Like, what's the sweetness? Because for me, I was like, oh my God, I can take that question. Let's say I feel out of aligned with my heart center. I'm deciding what my pricing is going to be. And then I go up into my head and ajna, and I'm like, mental pressure. Okay, I need to find the answers. So I relieve the mental pressure. How much do I charge? That is not me using my authority. So you giving this example of like, what's the sweet spot? And then I come into my sacral, which is my authority. And I ask, Kehla, does it feel sweet to charge this? Like yes or no questions, right? And then I'm using my authority to decide how I'm going to leverage the openness of my open heart, rather than using my head and ajna to figure things out and like dealing with mental pressure. Because everyone listening and watching this will be able to say, yes, I get the mental pressure around this. They totally make sense. So I just really wanted to like pull what you said and just show how you can actually use that with your authority. You could do that with any center, your throat center. Oh, what do I want to create this? Do I want to be visible? Do I want to share my story? Like whatever your authority is. For me, I mean, I was saying do you, because it's like, I'm a yes or no gut response. But if you have an emotional,
I'm a splenic. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like, how do I feel about this? For you, it'd be like, oh, what is my
immediately? You just know. You just like you literally, your body is like, ooh, I feel good about this 222 for this masterclass. It's just like that. And so I know, and this like learning your authority. My God, it's like it's just like green light all the way. on a highway, because you just know that this decision is correct, this decision. And you know what, if in, say, with splenic authority, if in 2 weeks I suddenly feel, no, I don't like this 222, I'm going to put a 257. That's it. That's fine, because that's how it works. It's right for that moment. Go and do it. Whatever's right for the moment, go and do it. I think I invited you for a podcast because my whole body was like, yeah, I want Kehla on my podcast. Yes, she is the one. And that's how, that. So if with emotional, and I think that you were just about to say, like, if you have an emotional authority and you're, a generator, manifesting generator, you have to kind of wait. You have to tune into it. I had a guest on my show here that was talking about breath work as the means to get into that emotional clarity, but that requires mastery too. That requires practice too. But when you really master your authority, my God, life is so great.
Oh, 100%. And it's an ongoing experiment. Like me as a sacral being, I find that I'm still responding to my ideas, and I'm not responding to my environment, because I'm meant to co-create with the universe. So that's something that I look back on all the launches that didn't work last year. And I was like, oh, wow, look at that, Kehla. Like, you literally just responded to your own idea, and then you went down this rabbit hole and you created all these things. Then you got burnt out because you weren't actually co-creating with the universe. And that's something that, like, I feel like you would never know that unless you were into human design, but it was just so significant, So
sometimes people say that, and I've heard that feedback. They were saying, no, well, why would I have to respond to something from the outside? Isn't it kind of disempowering? But that is also conditioning of our society, making you think all the time. Not every society and not every culture is based around thinking, and there's a lot of societies out there on our planet that actually are about clear mind, or not thinking all the time. It's a very Western way of living. I find that actually allowing your body to speak. And I know I'm not responding because I'm not a generator, but here's the thing. We're talking about our design. Like, my business is a manifesting generator. I find that in my business, I am constantly responding. In my business energy, I see something, I'm like, ooh, this is what I'm going to, and I just feel it in my body. This is what I'm going to do. So I'm wondering if that's exactly how the authority of the business works. I mean, your authority is the more important one. So if I had a negative splenic response, I wouldn't go there, but I definitely feel like there is things on the outside, and I respond to them, and I create this, more things are coming to me and I'm responding to them. It's very interesting to experience a different type through your business.
Yeah. And actually, I can explain this a little bit. So there's actually a hierarchy when it comes to the authorities. So let's say, you are a splenic authority because your sacral is undefined and your emotional solar plexus is open. If you had your sacral defined, obviously you'd be a sacral being and you would have a sacral authority. Anyone, so at least 50% of the population will be an emotional authority. If anyone has their emotional solar plexus defined, they will be an emotional authority. So the thing is, let's say if you and I went out for lunch and we're going to have sushi, or let's say I was like, do you want sushi or do you want like Vietnamese? And I'm really excited about sushi. The likelihood of you making a decision off my sacral excitement, because you have that center undefined and you're picking up that energy, is very likely. And so it's funny because my boyfriend, he's a splenic projector. So with him, I make sure, like, what does your spleen say? And I'll kind of like literally leave the room, because I know that energetically I will influence him. So when it comes to your business, it's really important, if you're making decisions based off of what you're doing in your business, like, you dance with your authority. Like, you're going to feel the emotions of the manifesting generator energy. You're going to feel the sacral response, and you're going to have your splenic response. So it's going to be like a very emotional, like, gut feeling and intuitive knowing if something is meant to be or not. And so it really is the combining of that, but just not allowing, emotionally, because that's the authority of your business, make all the decisions of how you're going to show up. And that, the way that you show up, it's like your business as an emotional manifesting generator is kind of the engine, but you're still the driver. Right. Exactly. And I think that's important, so that people, especially if you're a non-sacral being and your business is a sacral being. My business, so I'm a 6-2 sacral generator. My business is a 6-2 sacral generator, which is really crazy. Yeah.
It's so cool.
And I don't know if you saw some of my posts on Instagram. I was talking about looking at, if you don't resonate with your human design, to look at your unconscious chart, because you may have a different design. So I don't know if you saw that post, but
no, I haven't. This is
yeah, so
another
that's a
rabbit hole
whole
you just
other,
opened.
yeah, that's a whole other can of words. We could even do a whole other episode on that. But if you look at your unconscious chart, so let's say, I'll just kind of explain it here actually. So on the right-hand side here, these black numbers for you, that is your conscious definition. The day that you were born, that was the planetary alignments with the gates and the lines and everything that was imprinted on you. On the left-hand side, the red side, that's your unconscious design. So what that means is that 88 days before you were born, there was an energetic imprint of that date, that time, of where you got all your ancestral and familial imprinting energetically. So when you look at your human design chart, it's a quantum chart. You have the day that you're born imprint on top of your unconscious imprinting, which explains why you have conscious and unconscious channels and gates in your chart. So when you look at some people, if they're like not really resonating with their own design, maybe you actually feel like you're struggling in your business because you're like, you've got like your business design and then you've got your design and it's like, what's going on? Look at your unconscious chart, because, you might actually be a mental projector unconsciously, right? Which changes how you might notice sometimes that you need to speak out to make decisions, and it's not always going to be splenic. And then if you look at your business chart and you look at the unconscious side, this business chart is most likely still going to be a sacral being because it's, single definition, but you can look at and play with the unconscious side because it still does have an influence on us. So that's like it's a whole other can of worms, but I just wanted to share that if people are really feeling like I'm not fully resonating, like look at the unconscious side of your chart, because that can still tell you a lot. Some people are full on reflectors and they're like, oh, no wonder it takes me so long to make a decision, right? Because they need that time to like feel out the energy.
Yes, it's really fascinating. And this is what I really like about human design, where I think it's maybe comes from the 131 is always unsure that they know enough, even when they know more than anybody else. I always feel like, oh, I'm only just scratching a surface, because there's the next level and there's the next level. And it sounds so complicated, but it actually isn't when you understand, when you just take time to understand and it clicks, then you see it so clearly, like where are the influences and where's everything. I want to also be like, I know we've been talking a lot, it's a long episode, but I want to also share what you said about your business, that your business has exactly the same profile as you and energetics as your design, whereas in my case, it's different energetics, but it's the same profile. I have seen such a huge shift in the way I express myself in my business. That is a 1-3. Before I mentioned my business was 5-1. It was slightly different energetics and slightly different. I even saw how I attracted people who, like, there'd be people coming into me and they definitely had their projections on me, and they'd be like, make me visible, but they wouldn't actually know exactly what I do or wouldn't understand. They had their own idea, and I had to always deal with these people expecting me to do something or not understanding what I'm doing.
That's such a 5-1 thing. Like, hearing you say that is like such a 5-1 experience. Yeah.
It was mind-blowing for me to actually look at it and realize what was happening. Whereas I'm a 1-3, I'm really great researcher. I test a lot of things. I share my stories. And now where the business kind of combined, everything made sense. So everything that I do it on a personal level, just as much, how would I say, leveraging these energies, like I write a lot of articles and, when I do talks and everything, and this energy becomes very, very potent. But my question to you is that what would you recommend, or what would you say to someone who's like, let's say what I'm describing, my last business was 5-1. It was a different energetics. Like, how do you manage that it doesn't work against you? Do you think that you should really explore your business profile and sort of present yourself in that kind of way, or still add more of your own?
I love this question. And the way that I'm going to answer it is very intuitive, because, I've never read this in a book, but this is what I feel, when you ask me that. When we look at the business chart, so let's say you have the 5-1, I feel like, the containers that you create and how you show up, your content, your brand is going to have this 5-1 energy. But when people, let's say when they're working with you one-on-one, that's really going to be the 1-3 energy. Because if you try and embody a 5-1 energy, it's going to be out of alignment for you, right? So it's obviously that these people were attracted to your business because they had this 5-1 energy. And the 5-1, just to kind of summarize what Juliette said, is that, it's you do this investigation and you have all the facts and things. And the 5 line is very much like mentor, like savior energy. So like hero, like tell me what I need to know, which makes sense. So you literally describe the profile of your business, but obviously you kind of had this like, whoa experience because they're coming to you personally and being like, oh my God, give me 5-1. But you're like, this is my business. That's not me. Right. So I feel like, again, coming back to full circle the conversation earlier about like these energetic boundaries, right? And actually one thing that you can do that I think is super powerful is that whenever you create an offer or you have a program, you can pull a chart for that. And so one of my mentors and my friends, she just started this program and she pulled the chart for it. And she actually did a whole little like post and everything about it. Like, this is the energy of the container. This is like the purpose, like it. And it's so great because when you do that, what happens is you split the identity. This is the container that you're coming into, and I'm the coach facilitating it. So again, that's a way of setting an energetic boundary. And so I think that's really interesting because then you can decide, oh, do I resonate with that container? It's not like you become like codependent with the coach. You actually see like the energetic difference that's available. And so I think that's really great. And actually yesterday, I've had my podcast for 3 years and I just had the epiphany to pull the chart for my podcast channel yesterday. And I was like absolutely shocked. Like my podcast channel is a 5-1. It's got a defined throat. Like there's so many things. It's got channel 25, which is about like spirituality. And I'm like, okay, I talk about spirituality all the time. Like it was so interesting when I looked and I was like, this is literally what people experience when they listen to my channel. Like, yes, I'm a 6-2 sacral generator. My podcast channel is a 5-1 manifesting generator. Amazing. Have the throat connection because I have an open throat. Why do you think I can speak so much on my channel? Like as an open throat, I can talk for an hour straight. When I do a solo episode, I'm like, how do I do that? Like I don't have a motor center to my throat. When I'm doing my podcast channel, I do. So it's like when you see the differences and then we can stop like identifying, because I actually find because I'm a 6-2 and my business is a 6-2 and we're both sacral generators, I've definitely noticed that I started to like mesh with my business because we were so similar that it was hard to set boundaries. So I actually think the fact that you have an emotional manifesting generator business and you are a splenic projector, you're going to know the difference, right?
Yes.
But for me, it's so similar that I really have to pay attention. Like Kehla, for example, my business has a defined root. My root is not defined. This pressure that I feel in my business is not mine, right? So there's like, it's really interesting when you start to dive into and like compare and contrast and pull things apart and dance with your business or your programs or your offers rather than like fully identifying with it. It really does create this like healthy boundary.
This is really, really cool. And actually, you know what? It just gives me a sense of relief because as you said, when you know that there is an energy that comes from your business, you just mentioned root. You can see I have an undefined root and my business has a defined root. My husband has a defined root. I know exactly how defined root feels. I could be doing something and I'm in my zen and he comes up and just stands beside me and all of a sudden everything starts like my hands are shaking and things like falling off once we had a picture fell off the wall and I was like, it's just because you were standing here. But he didn't understand that it was not personal. It's just what it is. And so having that in your business, it will actually help you, and having that awareness about your business, if your business has a defined, say, root and you don't, when you're going to take a rest, then it's all about just awareness. It's all about saying, well, this is not mine. You say that enough times, you start believing it, right? So you start really resting, so if it's time to rest, you're like, yeah, nope, I'm not going to be taking this away and thinking all night about, this new offer that I have to create or this or that or the other. And it just gives you a lot of relief. So this is why I find that this is my obsession with human design, really. It's just to help people find that safety and security. And I know that's line one speaking, but we feel very unsafe sometimes because it just takes over. And we feel like it's really, really like it's heavy and it's dangerous and it's not easy. But there is a balance, so we can try and find this balance. So that was a really, really interesting, and I loved the fact about creating connection chart or creating charts for your. Did you say that create a chart for your offer and then create a connection chart, or just a chart for your offer and then see what it brings?
Yeah, well, I mean, human design is such an experiment that I would do. Like yesterday when I literally can't believe that it's almost been 3 years since I've had my podcast channel. I didn't think to like do a chart until yesterday. But yeah, I like looked at my chart and then I did run a connection chart because I wanted to see the chemistry, right? So if you look down here on your chart in the bottom right-hand corner, we talk about, we didn't dive into this today, but there's different channels, right? So you can see when you have two channels connecting. So for example, in your root in your business has 58 and you have 18. That's an electromagnetic channel. There's a connection, there's an attraction there. So you can look at the attraction channels where there's chemistry, or you can look at, dominance channels. Like for example, your 23 to 43, which is the ajna to throat, that is defined in your business. You don't have it defined. So that energy will naturally dominate you in, those centers because that's the connection. But then for you, you have your 48 up to 16 from the spleen to the throat, and there's a hanging gate from your business off the 16, but you're going to have this compromised channel. Your business is going to be compromised in this energy, but you're going to have it consistently available. So like, it's just looking, when you do a separate chart, you can like see and honor your offers, your business, whatever it is, the relationship, whatever it is that you're looking at separately. But then when you look at together, you can see like, oh, okay, areas of conditioning, for example, could be the G center and the open, undefined heart center when you're together because they're not defined, right? So it's just like looking and playing with it. There's literally no right or wrong answers. There's a lot of things that I shared today that were very intuitive, but like they just make sense to me. And I think it does give a lot of relief because even though I have my G center defined, I still see this a lot in the industry where it's so like things are so identity based, right? There's so much like, oh, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. And then you've got like that heart energy of like proving yourself and willpowering up to 6, 7, multiple 8-figure businesses. Like it's just a lot. So I think that this allows to set those boundaries, which is like, really powerful. That's how we can rest. That's how we put to bed the hustle and grind culture. And we start to actually create businesses and lives that are energetically aligned for us uniquely. And you and I today, we had very different conversations where, I'm talking about being a generator and you're a projector and this is your business. And it was like, we were able to still collaborate and have a conversation, but we have very different businesses. And it's not like I'm coming in and saying, this is what you have to do. It's like, no, this is your chart. These are your strengths. These are your areas of opportunity. This is how it's going to be. And it's so inclusive, which makes me so passionate because I think that I didn't have an inclusive experience in business the last 3 years. And now I feel like this is such a gift to share with people. So I totally went on a tangent there, but that was just my passion.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
I love that you did because what you said is important. You said there's a lot of things that they're not maybe facts, but they're intuitive things. Which for me, most of our humanity believes into something that somebody intuitively once came up with. Let's just put it that in this simple terms, right? This was a download. Christianity is somebody's, so way of thinking, and it's same with everything else. I don't want to be politically incorrect and offend anyone, but I don't really care because that's the truth, right? And so for me, when I have a download, that's the fact. It's a fact that just comes from a different dimension, and that's how I see it. I love the fact that we can share our opinions because I think that this is how we let people see the bigger picture and just shift the perspectives and really bring that, what you said, energetical alignment into our businesses, because that hustle culture, 90s, early noughties, and then the tail into, it's time to change. People are savvy now. People are much more like, it's time to stop patronizing each other and insulting each other's intelligence, because business can be still done without that energy and with being authentic like this. I'm so appreciative of you showing up the chart and talking about this, and there's loads of things I picked up. This was advanced, but you don't have to be advanced to know much. In fact, I think that Kehla has a perfect gift for you if you don't really know too much and you want to learn more about authorities and types and things that we mentioned. Then eventually you will get to this extra advanced level. You can come back and watch this anytime. Follow Kehla on Instagram, follow me on Facebook, and we will do our best to share. But what is the gift, Kehla?
Yes. So I created a 7-day human design challenge, as I call it. And what it is I basically took all the content that I've created, last year, and I created a 7-day email series where it's really going to walk you through, this is how you look up your chart. these are the different types, authorities, strategies. There's podcast episodes in there. There's master classes. And so even today, us talking about a connection chart, I don't talk about connection charts in this challenge, but you're going to get all the information you need so that when you go and look up a connection chart, you're going to be able to do your own experiment and understand, okay, this is what this center means. This is what, this profile means. And it's going to give you the foundation to be able to go on this little experiment yourself. So this is something that I'm really excited about because it's definitely brought a lot of value to people. And then obviously I have like a ton of podcast episodes that are coming out right now talking about human design, very much like this conversation today. I'm not a like, oh, this is this. It's like a very like, this is a 6-line energy of taking this wisdom and like going beyond, like, oh, how can we do the next thing, talk about the next thing. And so that's really the direction of my podcast channel as well. But that's definitely where you can find me, and that's going to help you on your journey with human design. So I'm really excited to share that today.
I'm going to add the link to your podcast because I really enjoyed listening to it. Sometimes, and I don't want to diss anybody's podcast, but what you just said about there is this offering a view a little bit beyond, and yes, it is a 6-line definitely at play, but it was very, very interesting to me. And, it just made me several times stop and really think about something and have this little aha moment and maybe change the trajectory of my life. Who knows? Because that's how we influence each other, right? So that's why I love, I think we're all influencers really, because that's all it takes is just an idea, a concept, an aha moment. Thank you so much, Kehla, for being my lovely guest today and sharing all your wisdom and your goodness. And I'm going to make sure that all your links are in the description and the show notes to this podcast episode, or if you guys watching on the video, just check out the description. Would love to hear, guys, what you think. Any kind of questions, reach out to us. We will get back to you. And yes, I hope that you really loved the idea of being energetically aligned with your businesses and, walking away from the pressure of hustling in your businesses and actually finding this sweetness that makes it all worth your while. I will see you in the next episode of Visibility by Design.